Welcome to my channel, where the scariest stories come to life. Before we dive into today's chilling tale, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications, so you never miss a story. Now, let's get into the horror. My parents got divorced when I was really young, and us three kids ended up living with our mom. We lived in an area where there was a lot of poverty and not a whole lot of jobs to go around. While we were younger, we had to live on welfare because my mom had to be home taking care of us until my older brother was old enough to begin babysitting us. Only then was my mom able to get a job, and the one she got was as a waitress in a bar. Because of this, she worked nights and worked late, so we were always home alone at night. We were fortunate throughout the rest of our young lives that although we were on welfare, a family member had this really old house they let us live in without paying rent. We also had electricity and well water but no other utilities. Our house was heated by a coal stove, and we definitely did not have a telephone. My mom was lucky to have an old car she could drive to work. All of our food was bought with food stamps until she began working. The house that we lived in was set in a shallow holler down off an old dirt road. There were no outside lights around other than the one we had on our porch. That meant it was always really dark outside. The only nighttime light available came from the moon, and that wasn't always full, so it wasn't always helpful. I was always scared to be outside at night. Occasionally, though, my brother would send me outside to fill up the coal bucket. Whenever he did, I was terrified. I had to turn my back to the hill, and I always imagined some crazy psycho who lived out in the hills coming down and attacking me or something. When I got the coal bucket full, I would sprint back to the front door, not even daring to look behind me. I always thought that while I was doing this, someone would be running behind me trying to catch up to me. I would get inside the house as quickly as I could and close and lock the door. My older brother would often tease me about being so scared. However, I often pointed out that if he wasn't scared of the dark, why did he never go outside after the sun went down to get the coal he always sent me for, and I was 2 years younger than he was. Anyway, things went on this way for a while. When I was 12 years old, on a pretty cool autumn night, my brother sent me out to get the coal as usual. As I mentioned, it was on the side of the house. I went out to collect it. I was wary of someone coming down the hill at me like I usually was. When I turned to go back, though I faced the front yard and driveway and was about to run back like I always did, I stopped when I was surprised by something I never expected. There was someone standing at the end of our driveway, seemingly watching me. Our driveway was pretty long, maybe about 10 car lengths is the best way I can describe it. The guy was not exactly close to me, and I couldn't really see him that well, but none of that mattered. Here was a man. I had no idea who he was, and I had no idea why he would be standing outside our yard like that watching me. After getting over the initial shock of seeing this random man, I changed my routine and walked very slowly over to the porch, then over to the door to enter the house. I kept looking back over my shoulder to see what the man was doing. He hadn't moved at all. He just kept staring at me. I got into the house and closed and locked the door. My brother and sister were in the living room, so I put the coal bucket down and told my brother to go to the door and look out one of the small windows. "What the heck?" I remember him saying as he looked out the front door. "Who was that?" I told him I had no idea who it was. He was just standing there watching me as I was grabbing the coal. My brother replied that he wasn't standing out there anymore. He was slowly walking up the driveway instead. I looked out the window myself and noticed he was right. The man was moving toward our home very slowly. He was dragging one of his feet while he walked, which made us think there must be something wrong with this guy. We didn't know what to do other than to just watch him. We turned the porch light off, thinking that doing so might deter him. I'm not exactly sure why we thought that. Of course, it didn't work at all. He slowly made his way up to our front porch and awkwardly climbed up the stairs. Suddenly, though, it seemed like he disappeared altogether. We had been watching through the window in the door and could no longer see him. I went over to the regular window, which had its curtains closed. As I drew them back, I got the fright of my life. The man was right there, directly looking into my eyes as I opened the curtains. He was wearing some sort of nasty, disgusting mask too. It looked like it was made from real skin or something. I could tell it was a mask and not his real face, though. I screamed and ran back from the curtains. After I screamed, the man began to pound on the window and started making this strange wailing noise. Put together with his hideous appearance, we were scared out of our wits. At least my sister and I were. I thought my brother was too as he ran out of the room. However, he came back soon enough with our mom's rifle. At first, I was shocked. We were forbidden to even touch the gun. In normal circumstances, my brother would have gotten his butt beaten with a switch for even laying his hand upon it. He had used it before, but only for target practice or going hunting with mom. I realized that this was a scary and unusual situation. He scared us further when he opened the front door and let himself out. He immediately began yelling at the man, telling him to get off our property or he would shoot. The man kept pounding at the window, seemingly ignoring him, until my brother fired the rifle. Immediately, I thought he must have shot the man. I learned later that he had simply fired a warning shot. That was when the pounding stopped. I guess the guy began to retreat. I was too scared to look outside to know for sure, though it was only about 5 minutes later when my brother came back inside that I truly realized what had happened. The man had been scared he would be shot, so he ran off into the hills, not even back to the road. My brother waited a little bit of extra time to make sure he was gone. We didn't know who the man was or what he wanted. I was just glad my brother was there in order to protect us that night. Telling us the man ran off into the hills didn't help me a whole lot with my anxiety, though. It just made it scarier whenever I was out after dark, wondering if that man would re-emerge from the hills to get back at me. I used to work in a bar that served a small rural community. The bar itself was a really old building located just outside the neighborhood. Other than the bar and a tiny country store, there weren't any other businesses for at least a half-hour drive. Because of that, a lot of people from the area would hang out there. This was in the mid-1980s. We'd occasionally have fights break out, but that was nothing unusual. Fortunately, the guys fighting would almost always take it outside, so I didn't have to deal with it directly. Those altercations never really bothered me much. It was actually a pretty peaceful job, and I usually enjoyed my shifts. It was a small bar in a really small community. Most nights, I was the only one working. The only other person who worked there was the owner, and he'd usually be around earlier in the day. At night, it was almost always just me. One night, I was working late. There weren't many people in the bar. The door opened, and in walked someone I had never seen before in my life. I knew everyone in the community, it was that small. It wasn't completely unheard of for someone new to come in once in a while, maybe just passing through. But there was something off about this guy. It wasn't cold outside, yet he was wearing a thick trench coat and a big, heavy scarf wrapped around his face. He wore a fedora hat pulled low, obscuring what little was visible. You could barely make out anything about him, and the dark lighting of the bar didn't help. The man came up to the bar and ordered a drink. I don't remember what it was exactly. He paid for it, then walked over to a table and sat down. He drank slowly. I mean really slowly. He nursed that single drink for what felt like hours. As the night wore on, the few remaining patrons began to leave one by one, until the only two people left were me and this mysterious man. We still had some time before closing, so I didn't have any reason to ask him to leave. But I started feeling uneasy. Being alone with him in the bar gave me the creeps. To make things even more unsettling, he started flicking peanuts from the bowl on his table around the room, randomly, like a child acting out. It was bizarre and made me even more uncomfortable. I didn't want to confront him, especially since I was alone. People often cracked open the peanuts and tossed the shells on the floor anyway. I figured I'd just clean up the mess after he left. But then, things got even weirder. I noticed him rummaging inside his trench coat. He pulled something out, and at first, I couldn't tell what it was. Then he removed his hat and pulled the item over his head. That's when I realized it was a faux face mask. The man had gone to great lengths to hide his identity when he entered, and now he was making sure I couldn't identify him at all. He got up and started walking toward me. I froze. There was a gun kept under the bar, but I had never used it before, not even touched it. For whatever reason, it didn't occur to me to reach for it. I just stood there, watching him slowly approach until he was standing right in front of me, staring me in the eyes. I nervously asked if he wanted another drink. He didn't respond. Instead, he pulled a huge knife out from his coat and, without a word, thrust it downward into the bar, burying the blade in the wood. I didn't go for the gun. I turned and bolted into the small stockroom behind the bar, slamming and locking the door behind me. I hoped it was heavy enough to keep him out. I don't know how long I stayed in there before I finally peeked out. The man was gone. But here's what stuck with me: the knife was still embedded in the bar, right where he left it. Nothing was missing, none of the booze, none of the money. He hadn't taken anything. He just left. To this day, I have no idea what that guy wanted. I don't know who he was or why he acted the way he did. But without a doubt, he was the creepiest person who ever came into that bar in all the time I worked there. My boss later said he thought it might have been someone trying to send him a message. He had some enemies, but he never told me much more than that. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one.